The dining commons is where the student center is now, but it was one big square kind of building called Lancaster, and the bottom of Lancaster was the cafeteria, and it was served for a long time. It was family style. You went in and sat at a table, and there was bowls of food on the table, and there was a faculty person, the host, at each table, and the students were assigned tables every month. And that way you got to meet everybody and you got to know all the faculty people who were there. And then in the 60s, they made it into a cafeteria, but it was still on that bottom floor. And then the top floor of that building was the library. And there was only 2 classrooms in Lancaster up near the library. But the downstairs was just little reception rooms and the cafeteria. And then they were building the new library and had gotten it finished when Lancaster moved on its foundation. I was teaching in there, and one day the building just leaned over like that, and all the books fell off the shelves of the library, and dishes clashed in the cafeteria, and nobody was hurt. The building didn't fall down, it just shifted over. Well, we were already had a new library, so they had to we could not use that building because they thought it would not be safe. So that next year they built the student dining commons. And then after Dr. Parrott came, he expanded on the student commons, the dining commons, and made it the student center with many other facilities there. But it was right there in the center, and it was called Lancaster. It was a liberal arts college when it was an all-girls school, so you could get a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science, either one. And all the classical things were offered, English and history and, of course, music and art. We didn't have dance in those days, but we did have violin. We did have some string instruments and music. We only had a very limited business department. It was like secretarial training and typing and shorthand and accounting because that was not a big major for girls in those days. But the quality of the teaching was just excellent, I think. They were just some of the best professors I've ever had anywhere was here at Belhaven, and many of them were older and had been here a good long while, but they were very scholarly people. But then as the school became co-ed, they expanded the business department until it became our largest major after a while. Originally, education was the largest major. About half the people would certify to teach, whether they were men or women. And then the Bible department became bigger. We had more people going into the ministry. Now, we had a big Bible department when it was all girls, but it was the basic Bible courses and Christian ed courses. Because in those days, women would be the Christian ed directors in churches, and that's what they were trained for. But when we became co-ed, then we had boys training to go to seminary and to be pastors. So then in the 70s, we had a much bigger Bible department than we had ever had before. And I think it was bigger than we have even now in the 70s and 80s. But the main department that grew was business. And being in Jackson, and many people could come here without living on campus and get their degrees, I think, that made that department grow. Then they added the sports majors, and we didn't have those for a while. When it was an all-girls school, of course, we didn't have any teams that played off the campus. But Coach Rugg came, and Coach McLeod came in the 60s, and Coach McLeod did baseball, and Coach Rugg did basketball. And in just a few years, they had just award-winning teams. I mean, if you look at the history, you can see it wasn't long before they won a lot of their games and a lot of the district games, and especially in baseball and then later in basketball. And then Coach Rugg had a tennis team, and our tennis team scored really well for about 10 years. We were always one of the top people in the nation in either in singles or doubles in tennis. We were just so proud when we first beat Millsaps, because our basketball team was kind of limited at first. And so after Coach Rugg came and got more boys in to play, then we played Millsaps and we beat them. And everybody was so excited that the president gave us a holiday. It's the only time we've ever had a declared holiday other than the regular holidays, so when we beat other schools, it's not anymore exciting as it was then. But then several years after that, our basketball team played Jackson State. And, we are not in the league with Jackson State. But they had won the NAIA the year before, and we played them, and we beat them in triple overtime. It was so exciting. I clapped so hard I broke blood vessels in my hands. Then after that, we had more boys coming, and so they would need the areas of business, to go into. And then when Dr. Parrott came, he wanted us to have football, which they just did not ever think of football and Belhaven going together. But our football team has done well, and we've even had boys go to the National Football League from Belhaven. And in between there, we have had our soccer team win the national soccer tournaments. So I think Belhaven has just done outstanding in sports. If you think they came from nothing starting around 1963 or 4, and after 40 years, they had outstanding in every team they had, And then when the law was passed that you had to spend equal money on girls' sports, then we've got girls' softball and we've got running and all sorts of things. And those girls have done really well, too. So, I think we have a lot to be proud of in that area. And so the sports administration areas have grown, too. And a lot of those people think they want to teach. They really want to be a coach. But you have to be a teacher before you can be a coach, and we have to keep explaining that to people. Unless you go straight to a college, which, of course, very few people can do. Television was just coming into its own, and there was a television in the lobbies, and that was a big thing because not everybody even had televisions at home. Some had. Remember, this is the 1950s, and that's when television came to Mississippi. But one of our big things was to go down and watch Elvis on television. And one of our roommates had been a schoolmate of Elvis in Tupelo. And so we were all real interested to see this boy from Mississippi. And we thought he was just being foolish, and we thought he would never amount to anything. But we all wanted to go down and see Elvis on television. That would be a big thing. But Belhaven provided a lot of cultural things, like we had all these people majoring in all phases of music, and they would have recitals, and we would have receptions, and we would go to those. But then for several years after we integrated, we still had some of the girl things left, and there was something called Play Day. All the girls were divided up into either they were greens or golds, and they would compete against each other in sports, in tennis and basketball, and writing plays and doing swimming, synchronized swimming. And so those were big things, was getting ready for the play days. And people in those days, were really proud to be a green or a gold. I was the green, But now some of my best friends turned out to be golds, but we would have to be against each other in those times. But you could be, if you weren't an athlete, which I wasn't, you could help write the plays, or you could do other things. But everybody had to take PE when we were here. So everybody played some sport, and everybody had to take swimming and pass the swimming test. And we had the pool down there for a long time until they tore that building down. And that was, I think, that was an activity that a lot of people had, and a lot of people would come. Churches and things would come to Belhaven and have cookouts and parties at our lake, and our Belhaven people would help participate in that. But we studied a lot, too. I'm telling you, there was more serious studying in those days, I think, than we have today. Mississippi College started as an all-girls school, too. It was Hillsman. And then, of course, there was still the W was an all-girls school. And so there was a lot of precedent, for... And after Belhaven turned co-ed, then the W did too. And the W didn't know what to change its name to. We didn't have any problem with our name because our name didn't indicate we were boys or girls. Oftentimes people ask me, when did Belhaven integrate the races? And it is important to note, I think, that Belhaven never had in its charter that it was a school for all white people. It had it in its charter that it was a school for young ladies. So then the charter was changed to say there could be men could come. But when other schools began to decide whether to integrate with the races, Belhaven had no problem. We didn't have anything to change. Anybody who wanted to apply and come to Belhaven were welcome to come, and they began to come. And sometimes people ask, well, when did that happen and what was the incident? There was no incident. They just slowly came in. Somebody came over and liked our education department and became one of ours, and then they began to recruit athletes that were black, and there was never any problem with that. So Belhaven doesn't have a history of discrimination against any race, and I think that's important, to note. But one thing they had to do was, when Belhaven was here, it was built on a Scottish theme. And so Belhaven means beautiful home in Scottish. And so our everything had to do with that. We called it the Tartan, one of the magazines, and the Brogue. And the newspaper was called the Clan Call, spelled C-L-A-N. And our sports people were called the Klansmen and the Lady Klan. Well, when integration came along, in the 70s, you just couldn't call yourself the Klan, even if you were spelling it with a C, because people didn't understand that. So that's when, in the 70s, we became the Blazers. And because we did have some black boys playing as Klansmen, and I know that must have been hard for them to explain to their family, too. And we were hoping that people would be educated enough to know there was a difference between a Scottish Klan and the other Klan that we don't think is good. But, we couldn't overcome that, so we just became the Blazers. But we still keep all the Scottish things in things other than that.